Hi, Max.
How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
Good to see you. I feel like I haven't seen you since you were on campus.
Yeah, seriously.
How's it going?
Not too bad. How about you?
Good, good. You know, adjusting to normalcy at home.
Trying to, yeah.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
How's
I know.
it down by you?
It's still craziness.
Yeah.
I think things lightened up today, technically, but
Right.
it's really changed.
I know, it's nuts. It's a very unique time, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Are you going to share your screen with the PowerPoint?
Yeah, will it still show my video, do you know? Like of me?
Yeah, it should. It should still show you. If you just hit the green arrow that says share screen, it shouldn't be an issue, I don't think.
Okay.
And I'm recording
it says host disabled.
Oh. Let's see, all participants. All right, see about it now. Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Yeah, and then you still come up on the side.
Sweet.
Yeah. And what I'll do is I'll just have students, if they have questions as you're going along, I'll have them use like the chat box. That way they don't have to like interrupt, because as great as Zoom is, it can be really awkward if you're like unmuting yourself and trying to jump in over someone else. So
yeah,
I'll just let them know that they can hold their questions till the end and put them in the chat. And then we can kind of go over them at that point.
Cool. I'll try and give like a briefish overview of like my job and the role and everything, and then hopefully lots of questions would be cool.
Yeah, that would be perfect. I have my list of questions also that I always go over, so in case people
that works
right away. Stop. You need to relax.
Did you guys get all that snow the other day?
We didn't get too much. We got like a dusting and like frozen grass, but it wasn't terrible, thank God. But it was definitely freezing and like sleeting rain at some point, so it was not ideal.
Yeah, my parents got like 3 inches, so.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
I know. I saw some places like had actual accumulation, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine.
No, seriously, it's way too late in the year for that.
I know, exactly. All right, I'll wait one more minute just in case anybody else signs on, and then we can get started.
Sounds good.
And everyone is muted, which is perfect. All right, so we can go ahead and get started, and then if anyone jumps on a little late, that's fine, they can catch up. But welcome everybody. Thank you for jumping on this virtual call with us today. I think most of you are muted, but as you are connecting to us, just make sure you mute yourself when you come onto the call. That way there's no background noise or anything like that as Max is talking with us. So Max, we are very grateful to have him today talking to you guys about his career path since leaving HWS in 2014. So he's going to kind of give an overview of what his job entails and how he got to where he is today after leaving HWS. So if you guys have questions as Max is going along, please feel free to use the chat box just go ahead and type your questions in there, or if you want to jot them down, and then at the end, you guys can kind of chime in as you have questions. But as he's going along, if anything pops up and you want to know more about it or you have a question about it, feel free to put it in the chat and we can go ahead and talk about that afterwards. So I'll go ahead and mute myself, and Max, you can take it away.
Sounds good. So my name is Max. I'm an alum of HWS from 2014. At HWS, I studied sociology with a minor in Asian studies and theater. So the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is a little bit taboo, but the more questions, the better. We're going to be talking about some things that are a little bit traumatizing, child abuse and sexual abuse. And so if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to talk about it. I just want to give kind of a fair warning of this stuff can be kind of hard to talk about, but I think it's kind of necessary to talk about. So my role is a forensic interviewer. And so kind of going over what that is, it means that I conduct forensic interviews, which are non-leading fact-finding interviews. So I do that on behalf of law enforcement, on behalf of Child Protective Services, and other investigative agencies. So the types of crimes that we deal with are child physical abuse, child sexual abuse, child exploitation, as well as witnesses to certain crimes, such as homicides or shootings or anything illicit that a child is witness to. A forensic interview is different from a typical law enforcement interview in that primarily 98% of the people that I interview are kids. Here in Pennsylvania, we try to do like 14 and under, but we'll go up to 18, and then we account for intellectual age for people with intellectual disabilities as well. So a forensic interview is necessary because when talking with kids, we're trying to avoid any kind of bias or swaying them any kind of way in our conversation. It's very open-ended. A lot of tell me about, help me understand, from the beginning to the middle to the end, tell me everything that happened, versus he did something to you, right? Which is kind of how it was back in the 60s and 70s, and it kind of caused this huge spike for the need for forensic interviewing. So like I said, we do it on behalf of investigative agencies, which also means that we're responsible for testifying in court. The DVDs are shown in court cases, but our role is also to help with that testimony as far as why kids say certain things, why it might have been different one interview from the next, like a small minute detail, or kind of what impact trauma has on children. So I work at a child advocacy center, and what that means is it's kind of where everything is housed under one roof. So mine is specifically hospital-based, but not necessarily all of them are. But the kind of good aspect that comes with working at a hospital is that any cases that come into the emergency department or overnight or that are kind of there inpatient, those all get directed straight to us. So the Child Advocacy Center is made up of doctors, advocates, forensic interviewers, our intake coordination that kind of coordinates with families and all the different investigative agencies, as well as the legal department to help kind of navigate our court schedules. CACs can be found all over the country. The National Children's Advocacy Center is a huge resource, and going on their website, they can kind of point you in directions towards different CACs around the country. And it's really interesting to kind of talk with other interviewers on different state laws regarding child abuse and things along those lines. So why becoming a forensic interviewer? So forensic interviewing is really important because typically what happens with a kiddo is they'll say something to a mandated reporter. They'll disclose to a teacher, my dad does something that I really don't like. And the teacher will say, well, what happened? And then the kid will say something and they'll ask even more questions. And now we've started to like taint the disclosure of this kid. So then from there, the teacher will go, well, the guidance counselor has to hear this. So then they bring them to the guidance counselor. Tell this lady what you just told me. So then the kid tells it again. And then the guidance counselor says, oh my God, we've got to go to the principal. So then the principal hears it, and then law enforcement hears it, and then CPS hears it before they finally come to us. And now they've talked to 10 people and their mom, and everybody's yelling at them. When we cut out all those sources, we kind of reduce all of that bias and give a cleaner testimony for court, which allows just justice to be served. It's a really interesting field, and there's research happening all the time as far as using body drawings, using dolls and things like that. And the way that I got involved was in grad school, I went on to study forensic psychology, which is the intersection of the legal system and mental health. And while I was there, I interned with NCIS at Quantico. The agent that I worked with only dealt with child abuse, which was the one thing when I started grad school I said I would never do. I'll never work in child abuse. This is just not the path for me. And one day we were talking about it. How do you do this every day? And he just said, if you are really dedicated to working with kids and you're really good at working with kids and choose not to, you're doing a huge disservice to those kids. Being a sociology major, it struck a lot of those kind of like Plato themes, and Professor Spates I know doesn't teach anymore, but he would have been pretty pissed at me if I didn't go forward. So I then started to kind of hone my skills towards juveniles and juvenile justice. It's a really great field. It's really exciting. Interviewing a kid is just a very different thing, and to know that you have a skill set that can do that, it's a disservice not to. So trials of Gabriel Fernandez has kind of become a popular topic within the country. My girlfriend and I watched it a couple of weeks ago during quarantine. It was like working at home. It was not a smart choice for me. But what happened in that, for anybody that saw it, it was a boy that was chronically physically abused and tormented by his mother and by her paramour. And the whole time CPS is involved, all these agencies are involved. A forensic interview is never sought out until the very end. You see the siblings being interviewed by law enforcement, and they're doing kind of a shoddy job. The one guy is telling the brother, you know, they would hit him all the time, right? And it's just kind of shows the importance of why forensic interviews need to exist, and that if the first time that something happened, if somebody had actually interviewed him and gone through, so tell me about everything that happens, what's something you like about mom, what's something you don't like about mom, and just to talk to him, it could have stopped the death of that kid. So unfortunately, sometimes we do deal with homicide cases or cases like that where we're interviewing siblings that are witnesses to the death of another sibling, or kids that have been chronically physically or sexually abused. And so that's kind of the role and kind of what I do. But I'd love to hear from you guys, and any questions, or if there's anything else that I can help answer about what my path was.
Max, would you be able to touch on your path to graduate school? So did you know leaving HWS that you were going to go straight into a graduate program? Did you take time off to figure out what kind of program you wanted to go into? Can you kind of touch a little bit on that?
Sure. So when I was at HWS, I knew that I wanted to deal with social deviance. I took a social class regarding deviance, and I became really excited about it. Was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Like, what is this like criminal minds-esque thing called? Like, what do people call that? I was really interested in profiling. I was really interested in, mine hunters become a thing. And so I had a lot of questions about, like, what do you even call this? And one day, actually, the Career Center hosted a forensic psychologist. It wasn't something that was really on my radar because I wasn't taking any psych classes. And my theater professor, Chris Woodworth, actually was like, how have you not seen this? You have to do this. Go talk to this guy. It was during her class. She was like, skip class. Go talk to that guy. Who cares about this class? I was like, it's your class. Um, so I ended up skipping class and going and meeting this guy, and he was like, it's not social deviance that you want, it's forensic psychology, and go check it out, read up on it. I applied to a bunch of grad schools. The first one I got back was my like safety school, where I was like, oh, this is, if nothing else, I can go to this school, no doubt in my mind. That was the first one I got back, and it was a rejection letter. And I was like, uh-oh, what have I done? I ended up getting into George Washington University, which was great. They have a really good program. So I was down in DC for 2 years, and there was no real break in between. I kind of knew that if I didn't do it now, I wasn't going to go back. Once I started making money, I knew it was going to be kind of hard to press pause. So just kind of went straight through.
And again, if you guys have questions, if you want to unmute, you can say it out loud, and don't worry about talking over someone. If we have to go in order, it's fine. But also you can just chat it in the chat box. But I'll ask you another question because I have a couple.
Sounds good.
What is one thing, so talking about kind of like your path on campus, what is one thing that you would maybe recommend to students who are interested in this field to get involved in, or classes to take that maybe you didn't get to take advantage of, or that you would do again 10 times just because you feel like it really kind of helps you in your day-to-day?
Yeah. Morals of Sociology was a class that I don't know if you guys offer anymore. That was like Spate's capstone social class. And it was super formative for me. It just made me think a lot about social consciousness and what it means to be a good member of society, not just a member of society. But then as far as forensic interviewing, I don't want to say silly, but my theater courses were such a huge help as far as being able to figure out how to improv when I'm in the room, to help me with interviewing as far as like for a job, but also as my career. Just knowing how to control yourself, knowing how to think 10 steps ahead. Because it's almost like playing chess. You're trying to figure out what the kid is going to respond and what way you can kind of branch off of that to kind of get to a clearer disclosure.
Another question that I have that I think a lot of young adults probably maybe are weary of entering this field because of is kind of like your personal self-care. So at the hospital that you work at, or through different organizations, like what strategies do you have to be able to like kind of not take everything home with you, or to not, you know, let the burnout rate, I know in this type of field, working with kids in these environments, the burnout rate can be really high. So are there kind of strategies that you would recommend to people, or ways that you kind of go about dealing with that to make sure that you can go to work every day and, you know, but then be able to go home too?
Yeah. So fortunately, where I work, I have a great team of other forensic interviewers that get it. We can talk about it. We can say, wow, what an awful day, or like, what a really tough case I had today, and kind of vent about it. Obviously, this isn't stuff that you bring to happy hour. You can't really go out with like your friends that work in accounting and they're like, oh, I had such a bad day. And you're like, wait to hear about mine. So it is tough in that regard. But I do a lot of self-care at home as far as cooking. We've got a puppy who takes up a lot of my mental energy. But I think that the most important thing is just remembering that what you're doing does matter. There's a couple of cases that really end up sticking with you. There's like two that I constantly think about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they're cases where I help these kids and they found safety and they're a lot happier and healthier. One of the kids I actually knew before doing the interview, and she had a lot of behavioral issues. And it just kind of creates like a whole new light when you look at kids and when you look at kind of mannerisms, that these are kids that need help, or that need an outlet, or need an adult to listen to them. And to be able to be that adult is something that's really, it's really great. It really kind of gives me a sense of purpose. in a way that I think a lot of other jobs wouldn't. We always joke at work, like, I wish that I could do computer programming. It would be so nice to be able to like make $130,000 a year and just like not deal with any of this stuff, but I just can't. It's just something that I really love and something I really care about and something that I love to educate people on because it's something that exists in society and us ignoring it doesn't make it go away.
Awesome. Okay, one question that we have from a student is about majors. So I know obviously you were a sociology major, but what do you think would be the best major if this is a career path that someone wanted to pursue, specifically if it's psychology? Do you think that pursuing a BA or a BS, there's a difference, or that might affect how where someone ends up in this field?
Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people, they end up starting off in social work. A lot of people end up kind of with that career path. I don't know that sociology versus psychology is going to make a huge difference at the end of the day. Not nearly as much as the work that you do on your own end. So for me, the first time that I applied for this job, I didn't get it. I was really bummed because it's something that I've wanted to do. And so then just enrolling in some really great online resources. The NCAC has a lot of really good online training courses. And there's something called the Tom Lyons 10-step interviewing technique. If you watch that and go into an interview and can talk about Tom Lyons for a forensic interview, they're going to be pretty impressed. He's kind of like the godfather of the field. So checking him out and just being able to go into an interview and be knowledgeable, and not being afraid to call the place and say, hey, what's going on? The first time I applied, my application was rejected like out of the gate. And I called them and said, what's going on? I have a degree in forensic psychology. Like, I've honed my whole path for this. Like, what's happening? And it turned out to be like a technical error because everything's computerized as far as hiring goes. So there's no shame, especially in something that you're passionate about, to call up the place. I know that that's so, like, everybody says it. I hated it when my parents said it to me of like, yeah, mom, I'm just going to call up every place that I've ever applied to. But honestly, it was so frustrating to me that I was like, well, worst case scenario, they tell me no again on the phone. So you might as well go for it if it's something that kind of means something.
The next question is about further education. So obviously you went to graduate school and you did that kind of right out after your bachelor's degree. Is this a requirement for the field? So if someone wants to go into being a forensic interviewer, is graduate school necessary, or what steps could they maybe take, or what types of entry-level positions could they get before maybe taking that step of graduate school?
Yeah, so a lot of my coworkers actually have a bachelor's degree. There's no real need here in Pennsylvania, at least, to have a master's degree. I know some states maybe require it. But then if you are thinking about the federal level, so that's kind of how it goes, is that there's like the smaller CACs throughout the state, and then there's the federal level. So the FBI being one of them and Homeland Security being the other. I believe that they both require a master's degree. I actually just got hired by Homeland Security, so I'll be doing that out in San Francisco in a couple of months.
That is awesome. That was going to be my next question for you. I was going to say, with what type of internship you had in graduate school, was that kind of your goal to get into more of like a federal or government position rather than staying at kind of like a hospital level?
Yeah, so when I was at NCIS, that was obviously the goal was to stay there. And then there was the hiring freeze at the federal level. When I graduated, it was the year of the election, so it kind of threw everything off. And so all these jobs that were posted or that I had qualified for were froze and they weren't hiring anymore. So then had to find something at the smaller level. At that point, it was more to be like federal agent, investigative, but now I'll be doing forensic interviews.
We have a question about, can you speak more about your internship at Quantico, what that was like? If maybe you could talk about, I know internships sometimes in grad school are structured differently. So was it part of your program there? Was it just the summer? Kind of touch on what that looked like.
Sure. So for our program, you had to have an internship, but GW did not really do anything as far as helping you get an internship. It was on your own to seek them out and apply. NCIS, I know when I was there was another girl that was from like George Mason. So I don't think that there's really any necessity of like, you have to be hooked up with this specific school. Any kind of grad school in that area, I think would have qualified. I was at NCIS for a year down at the Quantico base versus the like DC base. It was not what it is on TV. It was like this small brick building in like the middle of base by a subway. Like it really wasn't anything spectacular to look at. But they were dealing with a lot of really interesting cases, and it was really great to be able to work on child abuse cases that were happening on base or overseas, as well as terrorism cases and cases that had to do with like money laundering and funneling funds to like foreign nationals. So it was really a great experience to kind of be able to see a lot of things within the field, rather than specifically one thing every single day. But the agent that worked primarily on child abuse, he was the one that really took me under his wing and was willing to show me a lot about the field.
What does like a typical caseload look like for you, if there is one really, in terms of like how many children are you typically working with at once, or how long does it typically last, that from when you interview someone until maybe you have to go to court to testify? What does that kind of cycle look like, or how many people are you dealing with at a time?
Sure. So in the last year, I've probably done about 250 interviews. I do about 5 interviews a week. Some days there's 2 or 3, some days there's just 1, and it's throughout the week. But so what happens is our center will get a call from one of the agencies requesting an interview. We'll get the info about the case. So say it's an 8-year-old, there's chronic sexual abuse by the mom's boyfriend that doesn't live in the house. And they come to us. So then I'll do the interview. Once they get there, I'll talk with mom first about what's going on. How'd you come to find out about this? What were the steps? Who did she disclose to? Then we'll go to the back and I'll do the interview with the kid one-on-one in a room. So kind of, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this like shoddy picture, I think I had a better one. Yeah, so there's a one-way mirror set up, and I'm in the room with the kid, and then my investigative parties are on the other side of the one-way mirror, and they can see and hear the interview, but the kid can't see or hear them. We explain that to the kid as well, and that everything's being video and audio recorded. So once the interview is done, sometimes they take 25 minutes, sometimes it's like an hour and a half. It all depends on how much the kid is willing to say and how much they have to say. It's an hour and 10 minutes. It just really depends on how comfortable the kid is. Afterwards, the DVD goes to law enforcement for their investigation, and then it can be anywhere from 3 months to a year later. I just got subpoenaed for a case I did last April to testify in court. So it really is kind of a broad range as far as that goes. Then going and testifying and just confirming what was already said in the video. Sorry, I don't know what happened.
No, it's fine. What would you say, I mean, it's one of my cheesy questions, but what would you say is one of your kind of favorite parts of doing this work, that kind of keeps you like going back day to day and keeps you really kind of motivated to do the work that you do?
Yeah, so part of my job is also writing reports. I hate that part. I would interview 20 kids in a week if I didn't have to do the report aspect. I really just love being able to be that person for these kids. I think that something I try to think about and try to explain to parents is how often does an 8-year-old really ever talk to an adult one-on-one where the adult cares about what the kid has to say? And so that's kind of the environment that's being created in a forensic interview. And so sometimes a kid doesn't disclose, and that's very frustrating. But when you have a kid that is comfortable and willing to talk with you and shares with you these like really horrific things that have happened to them, it's very rewarding in that how many other people in the world have that opportunity. I know that that's kind of like a weird way to think about it or to look at it, but I don't know, something that kind of humbles me and makes me appreciate what I do.
Any other questions? I feel like I'm asking all the questions, but that usually happens, so don't worry. Don't be shy, guys. It's okay. This is a safe space.
Yeah, you can ask me anything and everything.
One thing that I think is important just to talk about, and you don't have to go into too much detail, but in terms of salary for this types of position, right? So if you're going to graduate school or if you're fresh out of the gate and you're moving to a new city, is this the type of career where you're making a livable salary, or do a lot of people in this profession have to kind of have a second position? Just kind of like, what does that look like? Just because I think that that's something that people definitely need to be thinking about as they're graduating. Or
right. So it's not the most lucrative thing in the world. I wish that it paid what it should pay. I am a big advocate that people should talk about what they're making, especially kind of in these roles. I'm one of like 6 interviewers at my CAC, and it's a job that not everyone can do. We've had HR people come to our staff meetings where we're talking about some of the cases of the week, and they have to leave because they can't stomach to hear about a kid that's covered in bruises and was hit with electrical cords and all kinds of horrific stuff, but you're not exactly compensated for that, and it can be frustrating. So you have to advocate for yourself. It pays like 50,000-ish depending, but once you go up to the federal level, then you start to make $100,000. So there's a huge gap, which is also hard and why a lot of people try to go to that federal level. The pay is a lot better, but also the type of work that you're doing is a lot more serious. It's on the federal level of investigations. So I would just say to try and advocate as best you can for yourself, and just try and be as transparent as you can with other people about making sure that everybody's being paid right.
Perfect. We have a student question. So this is a really good one, and it's one that I know students struggle with often because of the sensitive information that's shared and confidentiality. What types of internships for undergraduates would you recommend? So it's definitely hard to be able to do this kind of work as an undergrad when you're just coming in for 3 months in the summer. So what types of internships would you recommend for someone who wants to pursue this field after graduating?
Yeah, so I would try and just reach out to your child advocacy center. I know that we are always looking for interns. We have like master's level interns throughout the year, as well as a couple of bachelor's levels that come and are there for the whole year. But in the summer, we don't have anybody. And I'm sure if somebody said, hey, can I come and intern and watch interviews and learn about interviews, we would be more than happy to try and help. I'm trying to think of like what other kinds of things can kind of prepare you for it, but forensic interviewing is so different than anything else that you don't really, there's nothing that really captures it until you're doing it. There's nothing that like preps you to be in the room talking with a kid until you're doing it. So I would just try and find your local CACs or your like trauma centers in the city that kind of specialize in like trauma-based care, because a lot of our kids end up going to trauma-based therapies.
Hi, I'm Hadley. I'm the current intern at the Canandaigua CAC, and that is the
Oh, wow.
Canandaigua, Geneva, and Waterloo office. And for everyone else here, I'm a senior, so they're going to be looking for a new intern if you need contact information.
Thank you, Hadley. That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to mention that. I know that Hadley is able to work at some advocacy center close by. And I know we have different, I used to work at Hillside, which is close by to campus, but there's lots of different ways, especially if working with kids or children is the population that you're most interested in. Even just being able to work with that population to start before you enter necessarily that psych more focus is a great way to just have experience with the population that you want to work with long term for sure.
Yeah, I worked at a school with kids with behavioral issues before starting there, and I've worked with kids with special needs my whole life, so it does kind of give you a different edge than somebody else, especially being able to identify behaviors and know like, well, this is kind of how this kid operates and being able to adjust.
Definitely. Any other
questions? I have one question for you. I'm Alex. I'm a junior. Well, actually, all my exams are done, so technically a senior at the college. I wanted to ask, like, what makes you love your job? I'm also under the assumption that you do enjoy what you do, but like, what makes you keep going back every day, like, and progressing in the field?
So I don't really know how to quantify it, because it's so difficult and it's such a horrific, awful thing. And when I come home with my girlfriend, I can't really talk about everything that I did that day or everything that was said, not only due to like confidentiality issues, but also just because people can't hear it and people can't face it. It is something that if you love it, I feel like you just kind of figure it out along the way, as much as I hate to say that. It was something I was so against when I started. I'm never working with kids. I can't do crimes against children. It's just like way too scary and daunting, and I love kids and I can't do that. To then go every single day and talk with kids and talk to them about the worst moments of their life, it's something that I just really love getting a disclosure. I love talking with a kid and being able to kind of follow that path and work through it with a kid, and being able to point a family in the right direction to get them the services that they need, because not everybody is prepared to talk about this stuff and not everybody is prepared to work through it. And so if you can be that person for a family, there's nothing else that really emulates it. Because they're so scared, they don't know what to do. The kid doesn't know what to do. The mom or the dad or whoever is freaking out about, what do I do? What are my next steps? And to be able to be the person that can help them through something that's so scary is really rewarding.
I would assume, and this is an assumption, so you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I would assume that you might sometimes face like systematic roadblocks or, families who maybe don't want to get involved or who don't believe the child still, even after they've disclosed to you. So how do you kind of tackle when you come across like a roadblock, or you have a case on your plate that you can't move forward with because of some sort of systematic block? I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for us, we participate in an MDT, a multidisciplinary team, where all the different agencies come together. So our law enforcement agencies come, our child protective services come, as well as our district attorney representing kind of our legal system. And we'll talk through cases where there are kind of those roadblocks, or where law enforcement saying, well, we're trying to do this, but Child Protective Services won't let us do XYZ. And the DA is saying we need to go charge this guy, and we can all kind of get together and everyone can talk through it. The forensic interviewers are able to say, hey, this is what happened in the forensic. They told me this, that, the other thing. It's super credible because of this. What are we doing? Like, what are our next steps? And it's good in that you kind of understand the system and you might see where the issues are or why it can't move forward, but it also kind of lights a fire under people. And I've seen people leave our MDT to go make an arrest, and that's really rewarding. But like you said, we definitely get parents all the time that don't believe. I did an interview on a kiddo who reported chronic sexual abuse by mom's boyfriend, and mom said, well, she told me that 3 years ago, but she's a liar. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And the boyfriend showed up to the Child Advocacy Center. The boyfriend's sister showed up to the Child Advocacy Center. Grandma showed up to the Child Advocacy Center. All these people, we ended up being there for like 6 hours trying to talk mom down, figuring out what to do and where to place this kiddo. And she ended up with her bio dad, and she's actually still with him now. Court's coming up, and she's doing worlds better. Mom is still a huge problem, but thankfully for all of my agencies that I work with, CPS is great, but my detectives are awesome. They really go above and beyond, and so they do a really good job. They don't mess around. We've made arrests in the CAC for parents that don't believe or that are trying to obstruct an investigation. They really don't mess around, and all they do is child abuse as well, so they really get it.
Awesome. Okay, we have a student question. Is there anything specifically that you discovered at HWS that allowed you to further your interests?
Social deviance was a huge one. That class really opened up a lot of different doors. Professor Monson was such a scary, daunting force for me at HWS that really pushed me to like keep learning to try and impress her every single day. I don't know if I ever did. Near the end, she told me that she was like proud of me, and I don't know if I believe her. She just has such high standards, and I really appreciated everything that she did because she kind of instilled that need to know more and to kind of push forward. I mean, all of my courses at HWS were great, but just being in a place that really kind of cultivates education and really pushes you to ask more questions and seek things out that you really care about was just such a huge advantage compared to other people I went to grad school with that went to schools like, UConn and all these like huge schools where there were 1 of 1,000 kids in a class, and that was it.
I definitely agree about Professor Monson. Was she your advisor?
No, I was too scared to have her be my advisor.
Yeah, she was my advisor, and she is a little terrifying, but she's brilliant, and she really does like push you out of your comfort zone and make you feel like she made me feel so much smarter than I think I am, but also made me feel like sometimes I was like, what am I doing in her classes?
Jack Harris was my advisor because I loved how positive he was, but whenever Professor Monson would tell me good job, that was like highlight of the week.
Yeah, he's awesome. I would definitely recommend as well while you're on campus, if you're interested in this sort of field, taking a course with Jim Sutton. Is that who you took deviance with?
Yeah. So he tried to get me to go to Ohio State, but
I'm sure. Yeah, Professor Sutton is great for any of this type of work, criminology. I took a class with him. I think I was in your social deviance class.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
And he's amazing. So this definitely he's a great one to take classes with if you're interested. Any other questions as we go along? One thing that I would like for you to share, if you would, or I'm sure you would. So as we have on the call, like a lot of people heading into their senior year, what's a piece of advice, and it doesn't have to necessarily be like academic, I think this is just a good question, but what is one thing that you would recommend a senior does before they graduate on campus? Like whether it's a tradition or just like something fun that you did or didn't do, and then also going off of that, some of our graduating seniors on the call, what's one piece of advice for graduating, entering the real world, things like that?
Oh boy. HWS traditions, there's a lot of them. Watching the sunrise was like something my freshman year that we had to do, and I was so pissed off to have to go do that at 4 a.m. Leaving JPR and like hoofing it up there, not really that far, but then having to like sit there in the cold and like watching the sunrise. I was very frustrated for about 15 minutes, and then when the sun started to rise, I was like in awe and just fell in love with HWS again. And I made a point to try and do it every year. And still, I actually come back to Geneva every year. My fantasy football team rents a cabin on the lake, and we all get up and watch the sunrise together. So it's a good time. We love the area, and I think as far as people graduating, just stay connected with all of your HWS people. I studied abroad. Oh, that's an HWS tradition that you need to do. If you still have a chance to go abroad, you have to go abroad. I studied abroad in Vietnam. It was the greatest experience of my entire life. I was so scared. I took Spanish in high school, and I had like a 40 in Spanish throughout the whole time. And I really hate the heat. I'm from upstate New York, so heat's not really my thing. And I'd never left the US. And so then you go to the other side of the world where it's like 110 every day with like such a difficult language. I was so out of my comfort zone, and I am still in love with Vietnam, and I can still speak a little bit, enough to like order a beer and an iced coffee and like ask where the bathroom is. But you have to go abroad at HWS. I think that it's kind of silly not to. And I still talk with all of my HWS abroad people, as well as some of the friends I've made in Vietnam, which is just so wild to me. Anything else about HWS that I miss? I miss the whole thing. I wish Joe's was still a thing, trash plates. That bums me out every year when I come back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. My senior year, we went really outside of our comfort zone, and we made a lot of new friends. And the end of my senior year, I made some of the best friends that I've had. And it's been really exciting. I just went to a HWS wedding a couple of months ago in November. An HWS wedding that's coming up, and my mom's a William Smith alum, so I really love HWS and think it's a really special place.
Yeah, I definitely think kind of the idea of keeping the connections and staying in touch and reaching out to alums is huge. They're the ones who, as Max, like he's the one that's in this field doing this work day to day, so he's the one who knows the most about it. So I always think to surround yourself with people who are doing the work that you want to do. If you guys have internships this summer, or even if you don't have internships this summer with everything going on, but you want to have experiences and get connected with people, it's a great summer to just do outreach to our alums, get connected to them, set up phone calls or one-on-one Zoom calls to really get to know the field better, just to line yourself up that much more for maybe an internship next summer or some sort of job following graduation. It's all about making those connections and finding the people that are doing the work that you want to do. And so, Max, is it okay with you if students are on this call and they want to maybe connect with you further and share your information?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Email me, call me, add me on LinkedIn, tell me to call a CAC, and I'll put in a good word. It doesn't matter.
Awesome. Are there any other questions before we wrap up? Anybody? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Max, for taking the time to kind of explain this whole field. I always love these calls because I get to kind of take that knowledge and share it with students that are interested. And I did record this so that if anybody wasn't able to join, they're able to kind of watch afterwards. And I'll be sure that any students who are on the call right now, if you guys want Max's information, you can, of course, connect with him on LinkedIn, but feel free to email me, costello@hws.edu, and I'll be happy to send you his contact information so that you can talk further. So thank you so much, Max. Have a good rest of your week. I hope you, good luck with your move too. When are you moving?
I have no idea. They have to do a background check, so
Yeah.
We're packing up, but it could be a month, it could be 6 months, it could be who knows. So.
Awesome. Well, good luck, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.